Right, good afternoon all, and thank you for joining me today to listen to a relatively brief overview of our inaugural expedition through the small islands of Japan and the Philippines, and made up of four very unique itineraries. My name is Will, and I'm a member of the Coral Expeditions sales team based up here in Cairns. And joining me today, I've got John McBride, a true expert in the region and the perfect embodiment of a Coral Expedition guest lecturer. And he'll be providing his commentary on some of the main highlights across the Japan sections of this expedition cruise series. And I'll introduce you to him all shortly. If you've got any questions throughout the presentation, then please feel free to pop them into the chat function on your computer. And between myself and John, we'll attempt to answer as many of these as we can, time permitting, at the end of the presentation. So Coral Expeditions is Australia's pioneering expedition cruise operator, sailing for 40 years now. And our fleet of 3 specialised expedition vessels and tenders take guests to some of the most beautiful yet undiscovered islands and coastal regions of the world. Our travellers are attracted by our relaxed, small ship atmosphere and itineraries that larger ships simply cannot replicate. At a time when the cruise industry is moving to larger and less personal ships, we've limited the size of our vessels to maximise the expedition experience. We operate to high Australian standards of safety, and we have Australian crew wherever we go. We were the first to offer interpreted programs reflective of the destinations we visit, and to employ expedition leaders, guest lecturers, marine biologists, and scuba instructors. And it's a tradition that continues today. For those of you who have cruised with Coral Expeditions previously, be that in the Kimberley or beyond in international waters, you'll already be aware of the style of expedition cruising we offer both on board, but also whilst exploring the stunning destinations we visit. As mentioned, Coral have been in business now for 40 years. And for those 40 years, we've been taking groups of like-minded explorers to remote destinations with expert guidance and a warm, relaxed Australian hospitality. For those new to Coral, it's worth stating right away that if you're looking for that big ship experience with multiple bars and restaurants, nightclubs, casinos, white-jacketed waiters, then the Coral Expeditions product is probably not what you're looking for. Instead, we offer an informal and relaxed onboard experience with no dressing for dinner, no assigned seating, and no formal onboard entertainment outside our full schedule of lectures and presentations from our guest lecturer and expedition leader team, specific obviously to the waters in which you cruise. The whole ethos of the company is to focus on the stunning destinations we visit rather than the ship itself. And it's a very different prospect from some of the big ship cruise lines out there. Most days we offer 2 shore excursions and utilise our trademark and unique explorer tenders to maximise your time ashore with no waiting or queuing. Our shore excursions are also tailored to all, no matter the levels of fitness. And so we offer our guests anything from a strenuous walk or hike to a site of interest or viewpoint, through to a gentler beachcomb or exploration of the area. In suitable locations, we also offer the choice of staying aboard our Explorer tenders to cruise through the bays, creeks, rivers and coastlines for those not inclined to head ashore. The point being that we offer a range of excursion opportunities to fit all fitness requirements and areas of interest. And again, all shore excursions are accompanied by our expert expedition team. We do not outsource to third parties, meaning we can guarantee that the quality of the ashore expedition experience. So any Coral Expedition cruise offers that relaxed and informal onboard environment, and we encourage an open interaction between guests and crew. Our open bridge policy allows regular interactions with the captain, and there is plenty of both in and outdoor areas to relax and enjoy the stunning scenery drift by. Usually, I must say, with a glass of wine or a cheeky G&T in hand. The onboard guest experience is, at its core, built around 2 main areas. the delicious food and wine experience, and the schedule of guest lectures and presentations from our onboard experts. The aim being that you can fully immerse yourselves in the flora, fauna, history, geology, and cultures of the places that we visit. Coral was one of the first cruise operators to employ interpreted guides on our cruises, and it's a tradition that continues today. So each trip includes a mix of our full-time guest lecturers who join the expedition team, and special guest lecturers like John, who are chosen for their specific local knowledge and expertise. Your cruise, be that in the Kimberley, in Japan and beyond, will be led by a dedicated expedition leader who will work closely with the captain to determine our daily program, ensuring that the best use is made of prevailing weather and tidal conditions. Your expedition leader will join all shore excursions and activities, provide daily recaps and briefings, and is always on hand to answer any questions that you may have. The expedition team uses our ship's shallow draft, quick disembarkation capabilities, which I'll come on to later, our special tender equipment, such as the Explorer vessels and Zodiacs, and our open deck spaces on board to take you up close and personal to the remote places that we visit. And so now we move on to one of the most important facets of any Coral expedition cruise. It's our Explorer tenders. For those of you who have cruised with Coral before, you're going to be more than aware of the benefits of these, so-called safari jeeps of the seas. But these Explorers have been purpose designed and built by Coral Expeditions to provide the perfect conduit between our ships and the remote regions we visit. Be that here in the waters of Japan, Micronesia, and the Philippines, but on all our domestic and international itineraries. And it's something that no other cruise line, domestic or international, can offer. Our Explorers are really easy to board directly from one of the main decks with no steps or ladders to contend with before being gently lowered into the water. And they provide comfortable padded seating, a full audio system to assist our guides in sharing their expert commentary. A canopy overhead protects you from the sun, crucial when we sail in these predominantly tropical and subtropical waters. And there's a toilet for remote convenience. This might not sound like a big deal, but it's crucial to avoid having to constantly head back to the mothership, and potentially avoid the need to find a suitable bush or have a quick dip in the ocean. In short, our Explorers are crucial in allowing us to deliver that true expedition product. They allow easy access not only to beach and harbour landings, but provide the perfect option for exploring, the bays, rivers, coastlines, as well as doubling up as an excellent scuba diving and snorkel platform, particularly important on all of these cruise itineraries we're going to be discussing today. They allow us to on and off board our entire ship's complement in under 15 minutes, which again means more time spent enjoying the areas that you paid a considerable amount of money to experience. All of our Explorers are equipped with two powerful engines, can reach speeds of up to 25 knots in speed, and they allow us to cover large distances in far more comfort than the Zodiacs or Tinnies, in effect, utilised by other cruise lines. That being said, it's worth mentioning that on all our expedition itineraries, not just here in Japan and the Philippines, we do complement our trademark Explorer tenders with the more traditional Zodiac inflatables. And we use these in conjunction with the Explorers to provide that true expedition experience. And our guests can utilize these depending on how adventurous or not that they are, as the case may be. In short, Coral Expeditions are the only cruise line that offer this choice, and utilizing both options allows us to provide the true expedition style product that Coral Expeditions are known for, no matter the regions in which we cruise. So moving on to the ships. For the expedition series throughout Japan, Micronesia, and the Philippines, we're going to be cruising aboard Coral Adventurer this season and Coral Geographer. So again, depending on whether you're joining us later this year or later next year in 2024. Both these ships are our newest vessels in the Coral fleet, and have been purpose-built to cruise in these predominantly tropical waters, and are designed to take you to destinations that are genuinely inaccessible to larger vessels. Their shallow draft and maneuverability make them highly versatile, and they're the perfect vessels to explore the remote coastlines, islands, and atolls of the region. They boast ocean views from all public spaces, All staterooms are outward facing, many with private balconies, and state-of-the-art tools for exploration include our trademark Explorer tenders, the Zodiac inflatables, and onboard kayaks as well. And by carrying only a maximum of 120 passengers, they offer an intimate expedition experience that larger ships simply cannot replicate. So Coral Adventurer, this is, as mentioned, one of our two newest ships in the Coral fleet, launched in late 2019, and it's the vessel that we're going to be using for this year's Japan-Philippines cruise series, departing in the next couple of months. It's got a sister ship, Coral Geographer, which I'll come on to shortly. There's loads of information about our vessels direct off the website, guys. I don't have time to go into too much detail, but all you need to know, like I say, maximum 120 guests. All our cabins are en suite, all outward facing, many with private balconies, and purpose built, like I say, to provide that true expedition experience. This image is quite a good one because it shows the hydraulic system with one of the Explorer tenders adjacent. So that is raised and lowered. You board it directly off the deck and then lowered gently into the water. So again, absolutely no steps, ladders, ropes, or anything like that to contend with. Coral Geographer, the newest ship in our fleet and launched in late 2021, practically a mirror image of Coral Adventurer. So again, 120 maximum capacity across 60 staterooms, all en suite, all outward facing, many with private balconies. And again, a big range of both in and outdoor bar, dining and relaxing space to allow you to enjoy the vistas as we cruise through some of the truly stunning parts of the world. And so now I'd like you to introduce you to John McBride, one of our guest lecturers for this Japan Expedition Cruise series. John was born over in Perth, WA, but moved with his family to Japan when he was 11. He's a passion for all things Japan and is genuinely incredibly well qualified to speak about Japan and its history, culture, and people. He's the recipient of numerous academic qualifications, too many to mention here today, but include a BA in Classical Japanese Literature from Tokyo University. He worked for the Australian Japan Research Centre for 8 years, was CEO of Japan Sky Broadcasting for 15 plus years, and since 2011 has lectured in Sydney whilst also finding the time to guide history walks in Japan. John's actually kindly speaking to us today from Cambridge University over in the UK, and so I really appreciate him getting up early today, and Coral Expeditions are genuinely lucky to have him aboard. And he is the perfect example of a Coral Expeditions guest lecturer. John's going to provide his insight into some of the Japan sections of this cruise itinerary. So welcome, John. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us bright and early from the UK. Feel free to expand on that relatively brief kind of introduction, and we'll move on to our first itinerary.
Right. Great to be with you all. And that was a very kind introduction. Thanks, Will.
Excellent. Well, thank you, John. So straight away, we're going to move to our first kind of highlighted itinerary today, the journey to Japan. Before John and I get started, I do need to mention that Coral Expeditions have had to make a change to this first itinerary we're discussing today. We're unable to start this, so due to recently advised government restrictions, we're unable to start this cruise in Guam, as previously stated, or visit the wider Mariana Islands. And so we'll be commencing this voyage from the nearby tropical island of Yap. For any guests already booked onto this September 23 departure, you will have already received some communications around these changes. That being said, with the addition of some time spent on the tropical paradise islands and atolls of Yap, Sorel and Ulithi, we can assure you that this journey to Japan itinerary remains a unique expedition experience and will complement the existing Japan-focused section of the itinerary with some stunning, truly stunning tropical Micronesian atolls and islands, hopefully perfect to kickstart your onward journey to Japan. It's also worth noting that the islands of Sorel and Ulithi, which I'll come on to shortly, are incredibly remote and remain barely touched by any form of tourism, and therefore fit well with the Coral ethos of exploring remote areas far removed from mass tourism. So Journey to Japan 15 nights Yap to Tokyo rather than the original Guam to Tokyo, departing in September this year and also September 2024. So moving on to our first highlight, Ulithi Atoll. It's a coral reef so tiny and so remote, it's often left off maps altogether. And it would be very easy to miss if you're sailing across the Pacific. Shaped like an oblong amoeba, 15 miles wide, 20-mile long. The reef is a ring of 40 islets, only 4 of which are inhabited, and none of them rise barely 3 foot above sea level. The entire landmass put together amounts to a little over 100 acres, and our visit allows time for swimming, snorkeling, and scuba activities, as well as learning about the World War II history, which is obviously a theme of the wider itinerary. Mainly, I must say, tied to the atoll deep, calm waters at the centre of said amoeba. It's one of the largest coral reef lagoons in the world. A survey crew during the Second World War estimated the lagoon could hold over 700 large ships comfortably, with plenty of room for refueling, repair, maintenance, and storage. And such a vast naval base this far west is precisely what US forces needed in late 1944 as it plotted its final approach to the Japanese home islands. As mentioned, you get to snorkel on coral reef gardens off the deserted islets in a really remote part of the world. Enjoy the tropical vista, white sand beaches, colourful coral reefs, home to sea turtles, coconut crabs, a myriad of other underwater marine life, and loads of seabirds. And there's also the opportunity to visit the Ulithi Turtle Project and the vibrant community village. We'll gather in front of the men's meeting house where the captain will meet with the High Chief to thank him and the village community for welcoming us onto Mog Mog Island, which is one of those small islets. You'll get to walk through the village, visit and photograph traditional buildings and sites, and local guides will give informative talks on the men's house and the women's house and their traditional functions, the traditional Mog Mog turtle platform, as well as the traditions and customs and social structures of the wider islands and atolls. You'll stroll through the village market with demonstrations of traditional woven baskets and purses, as well as having the option of buying some of the other wooden handicrafts on after that. So Sorel Island, the second island and atoll that we've introduced to this particular itinerary. Stunningly beautiful, absolutely tiny. It's about 12 kilometers long by about 3 kilometers wide, but has a total land area of less than a couple of square kilometers. It encloses a 45-meter deep lagoon, which again gives you the chance to swim and snorkel to your heart's content. And this is the definition of the picture postcard tropical paradise island. Moving swiftly on, Faze Island, a raised coral island in the Eastern Caroline Islands here, and it's the closest landmass to the Challenger Deep, which is about 180 nautical miles away. It has a fringing reef surrounding the island and again offers further opportunities to snorkel and dive the reef. Similar to Sorel and Ulithi atolls mentioned previously, this is an incredibly remote destination and remains completely untouched by tourism, and barring some World War II additions, can be viewed in its pristine state and will be a beautiful last stop prior to our next stop, the iconic Challenger Deep. So the Challenger Deep, this is a generic photo. The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point of the seabed on Earth. Its depth is measured, close to 11,000 meters deep. The reason this photo, obviously I don't have a photo from the bottom of the ocean, but we're going to basically pull up directly over the Challenger Deep, and the captain on board is going to host a special event with each guest signing a commemorative scroll, which is then placed into a steel pipe, sealed and dropped to the bottom of the ocean. If conditions permit, and if you're feeling braver than I probably would be, you can enjoy a swim with literally 11,000 meters of water below you. Before the ship moves on to Iwo and the first of our Japanese small islands, and where I hand over to the knowledge of John. So Iwo John, over to you, and we'll keep moving through.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Will. Well, this is an incredibly interesting way to approach Japan. Not many people get to do this type of sail into Japan. So you'll sail past the Ogasawara Islands. which are incredibly remote. You're at about 1,200 kilometers from Tokyo at this point. And they used to be called the Born-in Islands, which literally means uninhabited, islands without people. And they were explored by the Portuguese, the English, the Spanish, but none of them showed much interest in the islands. They were probably inhabited from Indonesia, a couple of thousand years ago. But until Japan decided to inhabit them in the modern period, they were uninhabited. And so are sort of known as the Galapagos of Asia. So as you sail past, make sure to watch out for interesting sea life and bird life. One of the birds I'll be looking out for on a later cruise is the short-tailed albatross. And it nests on just 2 islands, in the Izu Islands, which you're about to visit on this cruise, and the Senkaku Islands in the Okinawan island chain. But we now have proof from 2012 they've been nesting in the Ogasawara Islands. So that's an interesting bird to watch out for. But as you sail through this area, the World War II history, of course, is something to reflect on. You'll have started the cruise further south, close to islands where B-29 bombers took off and dropped incendiary bombs on 60 Japanese cities, completely wiping them out. And of course, there's the history of the 2 atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which relate to the next 2 cruises we're on. Iwo Jima was really was a battle that occurred in February 1945 and was a stark reminder to the Americans, really the first reminder that Japan was not going to be easy to take, and was a reason given for the decision to drop the atomic bombs and not use them as demonstration bombs. So there's lots to talk about as you sail through this area. I just went to see Oppenheimer, the film, about Robert Oppenheimer, who was one of the gentlemen who was responsible for developing the bomb. I'd suggest you see that before you embark on this cruise. And there's the wonderful book by Richard Rhodes about how the atomic bombs were made, which is a great reflection on humanity and technology and the state of affairs that we find ourselves in today. This iconic image you all, I'm sure, know, particularly Americans. This is sacred ground for Japan and America. No one is allowed on the island. It's a very important military base to the Japanese. And once a year, American veterans, if you fought in this area, you're allowed onto the island once a year. But it's a great, amazing area to be able to sail through. It will be a very interesting experience. So next slide, Will. You'll enter Japan through the port of Shimizu, which is a very beautiful port on the ancient Tokaido Highway, which I've spent a lot of time walking up and down. Shimizu is on Suruga Bay, and we've just been talking about deep sea, deep ocean. This is actually the deepest bay in Japan. And really, one way of thinking of it is just the slope of Mount Fuji, which Fuji is 3,776 meters high, but it just simply comes straight down to the Suruga Trough, which is the meeting point of the Philippine Sea Plate and the Eurasian Plate. So the bay is 2,500 meters deep, with very interesting sea life. The famous food from the bay are tiny little beautiful pink prawns, shrimp. So make sure to, when you're on shore, to have a bowl of rice with the shrimp on top. Cuisine is an important part of the experience as well. But the great unifier of Japan who started the Edo period, Tokugawa Ieyasu, he grew up in Shimizu and he went to school in a little town along the Tokaido. And when he died, he was buried on this sacred mountain, Kuno Mountain, Kuno San. Zan is the word for mount. Unfortunately, his grandson decided to move the body to Nikko. Some of you may have visited that town in north of Tokyo. But the original Toshogu shrine is this shrine. Toshogu refers to a structure that is dedicated to a human who has been deified. And there's particular architecture that you'll learn about. You see the Tokugawa family crest on the eaves of this building. It's a hollyhock, a three-leaved hollyhock, and you'll see hollyhocks growing in the gardens. But for me, the great reason for visiting this shrine is the view over Suruga Bay. You look back towards Izu Peninsula and, of course, Mount Fuji. And Fuji is notoriously shy, but hopefully you'll get some good views at some point along the journey. Thanks, Will. So I mentioned the Izu Peninsula, which you look out at from Shimizu. The ship will sail around the very beautiful peninsula, and the first island you'll visit is Oshima. So Oshima is very popular with the Japanese. It's quite visible from the mainland. There's puffs of steam that come up from the active volcano, but it's quite safe to. The Japanese are very good at monitoring their volcanoes. It's quite safe to walk around the crater, and so there are some great nature walks. But it's all about the volcanic environment and where the lava has flowed into the sea. There are some very interesting places to walk around and to visit. Thanks, Will. And then on to Hachijojima, which is a little bit more remote. So the culture has been better protected. And it was an interesting island where they grew silk, and they used the indigenous plants to dye the silk into a sort of a yellow color. So you'll visit the Hattori family's home. They were wealthy seafarers, experienced in sailing between Hachijo Island and Edo, or today's Tokyo, and their wealth grew from this trade, and so they have a very interesting home, which is now a cultural center. So you'll learn about the silk making techniques and dyeing techniques if you're interested in botanicals. This is an interesting visit. The taiko drums are interesting. It sort of is indicative, to me, it's indicative of the nature of the peoples of Hachijo Island. It's pretty rough and ready. People from Sydney or Australia might have seen Taiko Oz perform, and that tradition comes from Sado Island, which is a much stricter, rigorous routine of training for the drums. But here it's a bit of a free-for-all, and I think it's indicative of the lovely, relaxed nature of the Hachijo residents. And there's also traditional dance associated with the music of the island. Thanks, Will. And then on to Miyake-jima. Now, Miyake is actually my favorite island. I used to visit Miyake a lot when I was a student at a university in Tokyo back in the late 70s. And it's a little bit more remote than Oshima. So it doesn't have the crowds. It has great wildlife, and is also fairly active volcanically. There was a major eruption about, testing my memory now, about 35 years ago or so. But a very beautiful island to stroll around and to look out for bird life. Thanks, Will. The ship will dock, so you'll enter Tokyo Bay. Now, please be up for your entry into the bay, be out on deck. It's a very impressive entry into this very large bay, but the entry is very narrow. So when Commodore Perry from the United States first sailed past and wanted Japan to open up to trade in the 1850s, he threatened Japan and said he'd be back with military ships the following year. But what he didn't realize that with just 3 ships, he could blockade this entry to Edo Bay. And at the time, Edo was the most populous city in the world. But all of the foodstuffs for Edo were transported on sea lanes, and they all made their way through this very narrow entry. So it's a really interesting, you'll probably enter early morning. So get up, set the alarm, and make sure you're on deck. It gets pretty light early in Japan, even in September, October. So it'll be an interesting entry to the large bay. And so within the bay, you've got Chiba on the right, Yokohama, Yokosuka, Kawasaki on the left, and Tokyo will be straight ahead. You'll dock and visit Kamakura, which is about an hour's journey by train south of Tokyo. It was the first seat of government that was established by warriors in Japan. So Japan had been ruled by aristocrats until the 12th century, and warriors wrested control from the aristocrats, and for 850 years, Japan would be ruled by warriors through 3 major periods, and Kamakura represents the first of those 3 periods, 150 years of rule from this very beautiful, austere center of military government. Now, this coincided with 1192 was when Kamakura was established. This coincided with the collapse of Sung dynasty China and the escape of Zen priests from China, and they all took up residence in Japan, built Zen temples in Kyushu and Kyoto, but because the military were based in Kamakura, they had a very large presence in this city and built major temples. And Zen fitted well with the lifestyle of the warrior, the austere lifestyle, the self-control. And so Kamakura today is still an original, protected, very beautiful Zen Buddhist temple-based city. The famous statue here is the Amida Buddha, the Buddha of infinite light. Thanks, Will. And the cruise concludes in Tokyo. This is my city. I've got a home in Tokyo, a home in Sydney. I became an adult here. Don't be surprised by the bustling, modern, technical nature of Tokyo. By the end of the cruise, you'll have an eye for the history of Japan. Take a few steps back into the back lanes of the city. It's very safe, and Tokyo is still a city that displays the history of Edo, and with an eye to that history, it's a very interesting city to explore the back lanes. Thanks, Will.
Thank you, John. And yeah, moving swiftly on so I can keep it to the 45 minutes to an hour. Move on to our next itinerary through the heart of Japan. So 14 nights, Tokyo to Fukuoka. Departing again in late September this year and in late September in 2024. So over to you again, John.
Okay, I think that was a subtle way of saying I should be quicker.
No, not at all. You go for it.
The feature of this cruise is your visit to the inland sea. I mean, the inland sea is calm. The size of the ship makes it perfect to sail through the inland sea, you know, it's known as the Aegean of Asia. So it will really be a very enjoyable sail through this beautiful stretch of calm sea. When I look at porcelain, I mean, porcelain is still, kaolin is still mined in Japan, in Kyushu. There are 2 very important sites. The original porcelain came from Jingdezhen in China. Earthenware tended to come from Korea. But this is an interesting time to reflect on the history of Japan's relationship with China and Korea through the eye of ceramics. And you'll also have some hand-on experiences as well. Thanks, Will. Miyajima is one of the iconic islands within the inland sea. You can see how beautifully calm the sea is, even in storms. It basically looks like this. A very sacred island. You're not allowed to give birth on the island. Pregnant women are taken off the island before they have a chance to give birth. And you're not allowed to die on the island. So it's a good place to visit because you won't defile the island. But it is the location of the Itsukushima Shrine, which is an original Heian period structure. So from the 12th century, it was built by the first family of warriors who wrested control from the aristocrats. Of course, it's been repaired through the centuries, but the design is original and some of the timbers are original to the 12th century, even though it sits on the sea. The entry to the shrine is the iconic Torii Gate. Now, there's a 2-meter tidal differential with the inland sea and the Pacific Ocean. So very interesting tides. You should be up on deck looking at whirlpools, and very interesting place to sail through. You'll sail through one of the narrow gaps to get in, so there will be whirlpools. Just thinking about the Taira, their food bowl was down in Kyushu, towards which you're sailing, and they had to monitor the sea lanes through the inland sea. So although this is a sacred site, it was actually practical in terms of defending sea lanes and protecting inland sea lanes. Thanks, Will. And then, of course, behind us from that photo of the Torii Gate is Hiroshima. And for me, the visit is an interesting one in terms of modern architecture. The father of modern architecture, Tange Kenzo, constructed the museum. Very moving experience. He built it from simple concrete because the objects inside had to speak for themselves. And there's also the new wings which deal with the nuclear arsenals of the world we live in today. People mistakenly think the exhibition dome was the hypocenter. It wasn't, although the target, the interesting T-shaped bridge, Aoi Bridge, is just nearby. It was a airburst, so the bomb actually drifted off a couple of 100 meters and exploded over the Shima Hospital, which still stands today. It's been rebuilt. But a very moving visit. The G7 was conducted here just recently. Prime Minister Kishida is from Hiroshima. He loves the city. So some reflections on contemporary politics and economics. It was a pity that, you know, the hatred that the Hiroshima people held for the dropping of the bomb has been turned into this message of love and peace, and that this must never happen again. It was interesting that Ukraine had to visit and talk about provision of weapons at the G7 in Hiroshima. I thought that was a pity, but anyway, a very moving visit to Hiroshima. Thanks, Will. You'll visit Kyoto, the center of traditional Japanese culture. The Japanese are very proud of their culture. They're very happy to share. Perhaps ask your guides about some things, you know, that you should be aware of as being a part of this culture, things you shouldn't do. I'm just trying to think of an example. One example is Japanese children. You know, they're so cute, they're so beautiful. With a camera in hand, you know, people rush up and take photos. In Australia, you'd be arrested. So just, you know, remember there are some cultural norms that you should remember when you're entering a different culture. And this certainly is a very different culture to enjoy. Yeah, but, you know, just remember how you would act in your own culture, and the Japanese will love you for being polite and wanting to be part of their culture. Thanks, Will. And then, as an Australian operator, we can't conduct a completely domestic tour within Japan. You have to be a Japan flag carrier. So we have to exit Japanese waters for a moment, and we do that by visiting Jeju. And again, this is a great opportunity to reflect on the relationship, contemporary as well, that Japan has had with Korea over 1,000 years. And so ask your young guides what they think of Japan, you know, and the Koreans will be political. They'll have strong opinions about current Korea-Japan politics. Thanks, Will. We visit Matsuyama Castle. Now, there were 250 feudal domains that operated through the Edo period. Each had a stunning castle, and at the end of the Edo period in 1868, they were all ordered to be destroyed. But there were 12 that were just so beautiful, the locals couldn't bring themselves to destroy them, and this is one of those 12 castles. An amazing visit, and your guides will lead you through the warren of this ancient castle. It was built in 1603. It is original. to 1603. Thanks, Will.
Thank you, John. And our next itinerary, so through Japan's Ryukyu Islands, 16 nights Fukuoka to Keeling in Taiwan. So again, departing in early October this year and the same October 2024.
Great. Well, I'll try and be brief. I'm watching the time. This is actually the cruise that I'm on. I can't wait. I've got all my lectures ready. But the Ryukyu Kingdom was an interesting kingdom that consolidated in the 16th century and was a tributary state to China and was invaded by Japan in the 17th century and became a suzerainty. Japan very cleverly decided not to occupy the Ryukyu Islands because you can see the island chain sits sort of equidistant between Taiwan, Shanghai, Seoul, Kyushu, Fukuoka. So this amazing mix of people who controlled trade between these great nations. So they're very beautiful looking people, and they look back on the history of the kingdom through music and dance. Thanks, Will. Before you enter the Ryukyu chain, you'll visit Yakushima, a bizarre island. It's very poor quality soil, and it gets the highest rainfall in Japan. So I'm going to talk about botanicals and, of course, sugi, Cryptomeria japonica. We mistakenly refer to them as Japanese cedar, but they should be called sugi. They're endemic to Japan, and they grow on this island, and only on this island because of the poor soil. After about 1,000 years of growth, the oil content of the wood goes through 10%, and they basically pickle themselves, and then they last forever. It's extraordinary. And so there are examples of 7,000-year-old trees on this island. So as a botanical visit, it's an extraordinary visit. Thanks, Will. I will talk a lot about the state of society and culture in Okinawa. And one big aspect of Okinawan economy and societal problems is the presence of the US bases. There are 32 bases. They represent 18% of the landmass of Okinawa. And so we'll look very carefully at these issues and discuss them on board. And this is sort of a nice visit in Naha, where the major bases are, because the locals, the glassmaking started in 1945 when the Americans were throwing Coca-Cola and beer bottles out the front gate of the bases. And they collected the bottles and melted them down and created these glassworks. But we'll use this hands-on experience as a catalyst for discussion about the issues of US bases in Japan. Thanks, Will. Again, I'm always amazed at the seas around these islands. There are 4 major groupings of islands. We'll visit all 4 major groups, and they're all extraordinary, beautiful seas, pristine waters. Thanks, Will. And actually, my lecture on Okinawa history is music-based. And so, of course, we'll deal with shamisen. I introduce a very sad song which uses the sanshin, or shamisen as it's known in Japanese, the 3-stringed instrument. The skin there is a habu, which is one of only 2 poisonous snakes. Actually, we've just discovered a 3rd poisonous snake in Japan. But mamushi are on the mainland, they're a viper, and the habu can be found in Okinawa, a very poisonous snake. That's the skin of the habu. But yes, one of the songs I introduce is about the fighting that went on in Okinawa, the destruction and the very sad story of World War II in Okinawa. But I mentioned the great beauty of the people of Okinawa, the melting pot, and a lot of very famous contemporary singers come from Okinawa. Amuro Namie is the most famous, and she took contemporary music into China, spread it around fashion and music into Southeast Asia and China, and is a great heroine of Japan. So through her music, we talk about Okinawan culture, and she's stunning. She's so beautiful. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, Will.
Thank you very much, John. And on to our final itinerary that we're kind of highlighting today, the island trails of the Philippines. So continuing on from Keelung, it's 16 nights Keelung down to Manila, again departing in late October this year, and the same in 2024. And represents, coming from Japan, a very, very different type of itinerary. I've started this particular bit of the presentation with this beautiful image of the Cuatro Islas, mostly to highlight the marine and water-based focus of this particular itinerary. Cuatro Islas, seen here, is visited around the halfway mark of this itinerary, but is just one of many tropical kind of paradise islands and atolls that we visit on this particular section of the cruise series. If you enjoy exploring or lazing on remote tropical beaches, snorkeling or diving stunning reefs, and generally spending time in the water, then you'll love this cruise itinerary. Cuatro Islas means 4 islands in Spanish, and is a collection of small islands, mostly uninhabited, and rarely visited by the locals or tourists alike. It's a truly idyllic location, and we offer a full day of exploring, relaxing, water activities, and cruising this tropical paradise, again, utilising our unique explorer tenders. Palawi Island. So towards the beginning of this expedition itinerary, you get to visit said Palawi and its national park. The main highlight here is its natural beauty, both on land and under the water. And along with exploring the historic Cabo Engano lighthouse you can see on the screen, you get to explore the island and have the option to trek to the stunning Punta Verde waterfalls and the epic viewpoint at Cape Engano. But as always, for those more inclined to sit back and relax, you can always just soak up the tropical beauty from the beautiful beaches whilst cooling off in the crystal clear waters. The Philippines, it's not just about tropical paradise beaches and amazing marine life. And we have multiple opportunities throughout the trip to engage with the locals and experience traditional Filipino life and their unique culture. On Boho Island, you can see here, you're aboard a riverboat for a leisurely cruise along the Lobok River, whilst you enjoy a tasty lunch of local delicacies, whilst being serenaded by some local museums, singers and dancers. We pass multiple traditional villages along the way, that being to the Tarsiers Conservancy, to view the world's, or try and view the world's smallest primate, and then continue onto a viewpoint to see the stunning cacao-coloured chocolate hills, or what are called the chocolate hills. It's a really beautiful full day of exploring, and will be a true highlight of this trip. Moving on, Apo Reef, another stunning opportunity to get into the water and explore the diverse marine life of the Philippine archipelago. Apo Reef is a coral reef system situated in the western waters of Mindoro province, and encompasses 34 square kilometres, and is considered the world's second largest contiguous coral reef system, and is the largest in the whole of the Philippines. If I was to include all the water-based opportunities you get on this particular itinerary, I'd be talking for far too long. But needless to say, water-based activities are a particular focus of this itinerary, and Apo Reef and its lagoon will be a real highlight of the trip. So moving on, Sibuyan Island, probably one of the most unspoiled ecosystems in the Philippines, and has been described as the Galapagos of Asia. It contains, as you can see, one of the highest peaks in the Philippines, and you'll have the chance to explore the forest and experience the really unique flora and fauna of the region, whilst also being able to cool off in the pristine waters after a long day spent exploring. Moving on, it would be wrong to say that this Philippine expedition is all about the stunning beaches, waters and marine life of the region. There's also plenty of opportunity to learn about the history and cultures of the region, both pre and post the colonial Spanish then American periods. One of the many examples you're going to get to experience is to learn of the Mactan history and visit the Lapu Lapu monument seen here on the screen. This is a 20-meter bronze statue of the famed Filipino hero, armed with his kampilan, native sword and shield, and was erected to honour the bravery of this native chieftain on the very ground that the battle was believed to have taken place. This battle was a really big defeat for the Spanish, although it didn't stop them in the long end. But and famously resulted in the death of Ferdinand Magellan, the Portuguese explorer, and he is memorialised by the nearby Magellan Monument. This is a large obelisk dedicated to the explorer, who incidentally was the one that brought Christianity and Catholicism to the Philippines. You'll also have the opportunity to learn about the art of making guitars at the Allegra Guitar Factory, known for their ukuleles, and their bandurria, a plucked instrument similar to the mandolin and used pretty heavily in Spanish folk music. And following on from Chief Datu and his fight against the Spanish, you'll also learn about the more modern history of the Philippines, starting with the Spanish conquest and the arrival of Catholicism in the Philippines. You'll get to explore Marinduque and continue your cultural immersion by visiting heritage houses, churches, and numerous shrines. You'll visit the century-old Barak Cathedral seen here on the screen, as well as the Mile insects and butterfly gardens, and you can browse traditional handicraft stores to learn more about the island province's local industry, and obviously with plenty of opportunity to purchase some traditional handicrafts to take home. In short, this expedition itinerary is perfect for those that want to experience the more remote highlights of the Philippines, from the stunning tropical waters and marine life, the exploration of some of its most remote and rarely visited islands and associated flora and fauna, as well as its fascinating history and diverse cultures. Today's presentation is designed to provide a relatively brief overview of our Small Islands of Japan and Philippines expedition cruise series, and time does not permit me to delve too deeply into all the trips have to offer. Bear in mind, our website has full detailed itineraries, maps, multiple images for you to peruse as required. And so obviously, please feel free to reach out to our team as required if you have any additional questions and queries. Between myself and John, we'll now try and answer some of the questions that have been submitted during the presentation. And rest assured, if we don't have time to cover all, we'll reach out to you direct to answer all at the conclusion of this presentation. So the phones have already been running hot a little bit, John. So we'll move straight in. Some of these initial ones I can handle initially. But do we have Wi-Fi on board, or how strong is internet connections? If you'd asked me this question even 6 months or so ago, I would say, particularly in the really remote areas, it wouldn't be very good. We, in the last 6 months, Coral Expeditions, have spent a small fortune, not that Elon Musk needs the money, but a small fortune getting Starlink technology across our fleet. And from what I've heard from the crew on board, Wi-Fi connectivity is now better than at the head office here in Cairns. So you're going to have absolutely no trouble, staying connected to friends and family, posting photos, video clips, that type of thing. Our standard Wi-Fi package comes included with your fare, and that's going to be more than acceptable for your initial needs. Like I say, keeping in contact with friends and family, posting as many photos as you want. If you're one of those very unlucky people that might have to work or God forbid stream hours of Netflix movies, not that you're going to have the time, we'd probably suggest you upgrade up to our premium package, which comes at an additional cost. But for the vast majority of you and your normal internet needs, it's Starlink provides fantastic connectivity no matter where we are in the world, and comes included in your existing fare. Moving on, do you get snorkel gear? So obviously, snorkel and diving is a particular feature in many of the destinations we go to across these 4 itineraries. And yes, snorkel gear is provided to you on day 1 of your trip, and you just hand it back to us at the end of your particular itinerary. We also provide beach towels on board as well, so you don't have to worry about packing those. Segueing into scuba diving. We're one of the few kind of expedition cruise companies that offers a full scuba diving facility on board all of our ships in the fleet. If you are an existing pre-qualified scuba diver and think you want to get involved in some scuba dives on any of these 4 itineraries, please reach out to our reservation team or get your travel agent to do so on your behalf. We do get you to fill out a particular waiver or form prior to your scuba diving. It does come at an additional cost. But yeah, some of the islands and atolls throughout Micronesia and the Philippines are truly stunning. I've had the privilege of diving some of them, and yeah, if you're a scuba diver and keen to get involved, please let us know, and we can get you locked in and ensure the equipment is ready and waiting for you when you come on board. A couple of just minor kind of admin. Can you do laundry on board? Absolutely. We've got a laundry service on board all our ships. It does come at a small additional cost, but yeah, we can provide that for you. Another one is the cruise itineraries truly all-inclusive? So yes is the short answer. So all of our excursions, all of our meals, alcoholic drinks during lunch and dinner service, all is included. Okay, the only time that we would ask you to dip into your own pocket, so to speak, is obviously if you're buying your own trinkets and curios to take home with you, and any alcoholic drinks outside of that lunch and dinner service. But in short, it's a premium, all-inclusive product. All shore excursions, all meals, all activities, and all alcoholic drinks, like I say, during those lunch and dinner services. Can you take drones and drone photography? We get asked this increasingly over the last kind of 6 months to the year. The short answer is no. Okay, without prior permission from the captain. We go to a lot of national parks and World Heritage sites, UNESCO listed sites, where they just are outright banned. And just for the benefit of the non-drone flying guests, we do ask that if it's a particular sticking point and you're particularly interested in drone photography, please reach out to us. But it would be a no unless you have prior permission from Coral Expeditions and the captain on board. How often is kayaking offered on the Philippine cruises? And in short, any time that we are stopping for a swim, a snorkel, or a scuba opportunity, you will have the opportunity to jump on board a kayak and go for a paddle to your heart's content. As touched on briefly with the Philippines and the beginning of the journey to Japan, i.e. Micronesia sections, it's all about the marine and water-based activities. And yeah, we will encourage you to jump on board kayaks, go diving, go snorkeling, go snorkeling, or just lazing on these, paradise tropical beaches to your heart's content. So, multiple opportunities throughout, particularly that Philippine itinerary. One for you, John, you touched on it earlier about kind of cultural interactions. Is there any tips? So, when visiting the shrines and temples in particular, are there any, similar to, I suppose, in the Middle East, are there any kind of dress codes that should be respected?
Yeah, excellent question. And your guides will show you how to approach the shrine. So there is an ablution point where you wash your hands. Since COVID, we don't bother washing our mouths out anymore. That seems to have disappeared. But it's nice to participate, and the Japanese are delighted when you do so. And then in front of the shrine, it's 2 bows, not from the neck, which is an apology in Japan. It's from the waist, a proper bow twice, and then 2 claps. And the hands are held together, and the deity is represented by your left hand, and you draw your right hand down, which represents yourself, as two claps, which draws the attention of the deity to you. And then you bow just once more, which is simply a thank you. In Japanese shrines, you don't stand there, wishing for something. It's just thanking the gods. The gods are usually in mountains and trees. They represent nature. They represent ancestors, as in the Toshogu shrine. This is Tokugawa Ieyasu that we're thanking for what he achieved in his life. You can just stand and take photos if you want to, but the Japanese love it when you actually participate, so I heartily encourage you to be part of all of that cultural experience.
Thank you, John. And another one for you, actually, which I'll chip into a little bit. So we get this asked in any webinar on any of the destinations that we cruise in is what can I expect weather-wise, and the segue into what kind of clothing I should pack. So before John talks maybe on Japan, the Philippines in kind of late October, we're coming towards the end of the rainy season in the Philippines. So you should expect some, typical tropics, I suppose. You should expect some pretty torrential downpours, but they tend to be short and sharp, particularly towards the end of the rainy season there. And with the temperatures in late October in the Philippines around the 25 to 30 degree marks, you're never going to be cold, but on occasion you might get wet. So similar question to you. Around Japan.
Yes. October's a lovely month to be in Japan. The humidity has left the air, but it's still nice and warm. So Okinawa will be sort of 21 to 27 degrees. So fairly high minimums and sort of reasonable maximums. But no, late September, October is a great time to visit Japan.
Thank you very much. And I think just time for maybe one more. I'm very conscious that we've just gone over the hour, guys. And I get asked this quite a lot, again, on previous webinars, in how physically fit do you need to be to get the most out of our kind of expedition itineraries? And the answer is the same, whether or not it's the Kimberley, Tasmania, our cruises in domestic waters, and then, our range of international expedition itineraries we offer multiple options. And I think I touched on it briefly earlier on in the presentation, that it doesn't matter where we are, we will always cater to different physical requirements. So you might have an option of a reasonably strenuous walk up to a viewpoint or point of interest. But that being said, we will always offer a much more gentler, shorter walk or a beach comb. Where applicable, we can use our Zodiacs and our Explorer tenders, to cruise the bays and coastline and rivers of each particular area. The point being that you don't have to be an Olympic runner to get the best out of our itineraries, but we provide and cater for all. So no matter your levels of physical fitness, we do encourage people, if they want to take part in some of our kind of more strenuous hikes, and you want to bring hiking poles, absolutely, please feel free to do so. Obviously bring some suitable footwear as required. But yeah, there will always be an option, no matter how up for it you are in terms of the kind of more physical aspects of any of our itineraries. And just time for one more question. Someone's asked luggage restrictions, and do we have any? The short answer is no. I've checked in guests domestically and seen people turn up with literally just an overnight bag for a couple of weeks itinerary. The other end of the stick, I suppose, is I've seen people turn up with dozens, well, not dozens, but multiple large suitcases. It's totally up to you how much luggage you bring. Within reason, there's no luggage restrictions, but just bear in mind as well that we're not that Cunard, QE2 kind of experience where you're dressing in for dressing for dinner, that type of thing. It's a really informal kind of laid back onboard experience. But if you want to get dressed up, please feel free to do so. But don't be obliged to. But in short, there's no luggage restrictions. Please bring all you need to enjoy what will be a fantastic cruise itinerary. Just in light of going over the hour, I think I will wrap this up now. Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate you providing that kind of expert insight to those Japan sections of the itinerary. And I'm sure the guests will look forward to your schedule of lectures and presentations that you're going to do on board. It's, as I mentioned, it's a relatively brief overview of this pretty chunky cruise series, guys. If you've got any questions at all, please reach out to our reservations and sales team on the email and phone number you can see on the screen, or please contact your preferred travel agent, and we are more than happy to answer any and all questions and provide any further information that you may require. For those of you that are booked to go on any of these sections of our Japan and Philippines, it's going to be a spectacularly beautiful expedition itinerary. I'm incredibly jealous. For any of you who are considering your options for later this year or maybe in 2024, again, hopefully this has given you a little bit of inspiration to pick up the phone and get yourself booked on one of these cruise itineraries. Thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much once again, John, particularly getting up early from over in the UK. Thank you to all. Have a great day, and we'll see you aboard soon. Goodbye.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.